Welcome to Stop My Crisis with Vivian Gaspar, and here we have today a very special episode that's post-election emphasis on what's going to happen with our brand new president, Donald Trump. And what's special about this is understanding that he is the first president in well over 100 years, and certainly in many generations, who has never been elected to public office before or had any background in the military. That is a very unique thing to say about an elected American president. And let's face it, here in New Jersey, we are overwhelmingly Democratic. And so when he won, there's so many New Jersey residents who are very sad, very passionate, and still, honestly, in a state of shock. So what I'd like to do is bring to you information coming from two lobbyists who have a lot of expertise in New Jersey politics and what goes on in Trenton. And we're very fortunate to have here today both Barbara DeMarco and Sal Anderton. And they're both going to explain to us what do they believe is the outcome in real life effect for New Jersey residents. Not to mention the fact that we also had something else on the ballot that was turned down. Of course, it's really apropos and helpful that question one on the ballot had to do with the game industry, and Barbara is a gaming lobbyist. I want to know what happened. I certainly thought it was a good idea to bring in casinos and more gaming to bring revenue and jobs, but of course it was turned down. I'd love to hear more about that myself. So Barbara DeMarco is a Trenton-based governmental affairs consultant with Porzio Governmental Affairs. Barbara specializes in gaming, technology, education, and agricultural policy, as well as procurement and corporate developmental issues. For the past 4 years, Barbara has been named to the State Senate Majority Leader Loretta Weinberg's list of the most powerful and influential women in Trenton for Politicker, New Jersey. Sal Anderton is an attorney with Porzio, Bromberg, and Newman in Morristown, and is also a lobbyist with Porzio Governmental Affairs in Trenton. In those capacities, he represents numerous and varied interests before various state government agencies and the New Jersey legislative and executive branches. Welcome, both of you. Thank you so much for taking time out of this very new, changing, almost chaotic environment. Tell me, what's it like down in Trenton right now? Sal, you want to start us off?
I think it's certainly a new political era for our nation. There's been a lot of speculation about the future of Governor Christie in Trenton. I think he's rather enjoying the speculation because, quite frankly, he's probably, as he's said, he's going to continue his term and finish it out as we elected him to do. Yeah, it is good. And so I think that there's, a new year. This is only halfway through our current legislative term. So you're going to see an ongoing into 2017, kind of an interesting time because we have in New Jersey what will be the first post-Trump election, our gubernatorial election in 2017. As you know, Virginia and New Jersey are the only states that have these off-cycle elections.
Yeah.
So our 2017 in New Jersey politically is probably going to be very interesting.
So when you say interesting, I would like to start with asking Barbara, I think a lot of people are wondering, either they were for it and obviously more were against it. What happened with that number one question, addition to elected officials, with the gaming ballot? Please explain that, because I think there was a lot of misunderstanding that led to that outcome.
I actually believe so much of that and the decisions rendered by the electorate was based on the fact that Atlantic City is doing so poorly. And right before the election, a month, maybe 45 days, the Taj Mahal closed.
Right.
That was an extra 3,000 jobs on what I believe was 12,000 already lost with the closure of Trump Plaza, with the closure of Showboat, with the closure of the former Golden Nugget or the Hilton, the casino currently. And when you see that kind of massive closure and you see the impact on a city that depended on the ratables and the economic activity, and people go to Atlantic City who are local, weekends for entertainment, for shows, for dinners, you see the impact of closed facilities, especially along the boardwalk. And I think people got to the point where they said to themselves, okay, why would we add more if what we have is not working? I also believe for many people, it's just the timing was somewhat off. You had so much going on, so many competing interests. You had the presidential election certainly dominating both probably the New York media buy as well as the Philadelphia media buy, and as you know, New Jersey's stuck in the middle.
We're sandwiched in for so many other reasons.
So it's very, very difficult to get a message out other than that, especially when you have Pennsylvania, which was a contested state, for the southern part of the state. The other thing that's interesting about this is the people in the South, and I am from Atlantic County, it's devastated, southern New Jersey, what has happened to Atlantic City. There are literally two major industries down there. There is casino gaming with tourism, seasonal tourism, and then there's agriculture and all the byproducts of agriculture. So your trucking, your produce brokers, your food processing plants like Campbell Soup and Camden. And other than that, that's really what makes up the bulk of industries in southern New Jersey for those who don't travel maybe into Philadelphia or north. Mm-hmm. And when you see that many jobs lost, it has a profound and significant impact on a whole region of our state. And I think people observed that, people saw that, people heard that, and the timing was just off.
Now, I thought approving this bill would have helped to bring those jobs back. I mean, for example, a lot of those, the typical thing is you hear that in the gaming industry, the casinos, you have all the dealers and all the offshoot jobs that are lost. I thought it would have been a great thing to provide other jobs to these people in those industries by opening other types of gaming.
But those other gaming options, if the initiative was approved, would have been in the northern part of the state, and so
they would have had to relocate.
They would have, which I'm sure folks would do for work. They would have done that. But to Barbara's point, voters in the southern part of the state said, "Hey, wait a second, that doesn't necessarily improve our situation here south of 195." So that was,
it compounds the problems.
Compounding factor, sure.
Because you're just shifting. You're not improving what's there. So you're going to leave a ghost town of sorts as you make everything gravitate north. And that was a big fear. If you look at the demographic of people who come to Atlantic City, you will find that the majority right now comes from that New York metropolitan area. It's not necessarily Pennsylvania. You have at least 26 sites on the Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, and going up into New York border. If you are in Pennsylvania, you can stop literally at the bottom of every single bridge or access into New Jersey and gamble. So you have the Sands up in off of 78. You have Mount Airy off of 80. You have over the Turnpike Parks Casino. You have over the Ben Franklin Bridge Sugar House, and soon another one at the bottom of Walt Whitman. Then you have at the bottom of Commodore Barry Harris, all on the other side of the river. So if you're coming west to east, why?
Okay, so that being said, we still have some amount of horse racing. How is that going to be affected? Is there going to be an effect?
It's already, the impact is already been, it's just horrible. There's no other word for it. First, I'd like to say horse racing, and people don't understand that, it is a agribusiness. It supports open space and farmland. It supports all the auxiliary businesses like hay and feed suppliers. It is a industry that, although has a wagering component, and you need a marketplace, which is your racetrack, what it does is it supports in the most densely populated state in the country that has lost 50% of its farmland in the last 50 years. It supports the farming industries.
I see. Well, who would think that supports the farming industries? Usually you're thinking of what you actually see in front of you.
Right.
The racing itself.
Right. And I think, when you look at it in a state that's the Garden State, and a state that has a long and rich tradition of equine, we have some of the best recreational, equestrian, pleasure horse locations in the world, Far Hill Steeplechase Meet as one example. Everything that happens with your horse racing industry. This would be thoroughbreds, which are
Right.
flats, or standardbreds, which are more, they race with the assistance of a cart or it,
You have the jockey,
jockey
behind them, not on top of
right,
the
exactly,
horse.
exactly. And um, everything else feeds off of that because that's where the most investment is made. So if you start losing those items that are most valuable, it's going to impact all those other types of horses that make up our equine population. So it's just so intricately tied together. So when you have states like Pennsylvania, New York, Delaware, Maryland, and I could keep naming
Right, of
them,
course.
that have blended casino gaming and racing, where the proceeds of casinos help racing survive, and then you don't do it in a state like New Jersey, and you leave New Jersey racing industry on its own to survive with all that competition, because keep in mind, you can't restrict your horse population, their owners, their trainers, their jockeys, their drivers to stay in one state. They are mobile and they will
Okay.
go where the most money, the most opportunity, the best type of racing is available. And
Let me bring you to another area. Right now, we're talking about a lot of jobs lost and how industries have failed into a large degree. I mean, we're talking about all those casino closures. That's a failing industry, especially we're talking about right here in New Jersey. Well, what happens when people lose jobs? They're having a lot of danger with losing their homes. I mean, as a foreclosure specialist, I've helped hundreds of families keep their homes. I want to hear from both of you what you see in that realm. So, of course, the impulse is to say, well, housing is great. But now when we're talking about thousands and thousands of people losing their jobs, New Jersey is still in the top 5, or actually I believe it's top 3 of foreclosure states in the country. Right. So what is going to be the Trump's reaction or housing? Because I watched all 3 debates. And I honestly don't remember seeing anything about the housing crisis in any of those 3 debates.
I don't think that they really discussed that as a specific issue. Those of us who watch the Fed,
Right.
there's a sense generally that interest rates are going to start increasing. Certainly, bond rates have begun increasing since the president-elect has been elected. I think you're going to see perhaps a sharper spike because of his announced policies, which to this point have been, the lack of detail has been pretty significant. There'll be more, but the suspicion is that you're going to see increase in interest rates over the next several months once he gets started.
But what about the foreclosure market? That's where I'm concerned. I have every day several people contact me through, whether it's direct calls, emails. I really have a ton of people in massive concern as to what this new administration is going to mean. For example, the HAMP program that was enacted March of 2009 under President Obama is set to expire the end of this month, December 31st. And so this could be extended, and that's the deadline for submissions. Well, do you believe that Donald Trump will extend that? Do you think?
I don't have any reason to think that that's a priority in that administration or with this Congress at this time. So if it's not extended under the current president and Congress, I would suspect it's not going to be on the top of the list in the first 100 days of the Trump presidency. That's at least my expectation. What you do find, I think, is that as interest rates go up, you're going to perhaps in the future have a tendency for less foreclosures. And keep in mind, our current foreclosure crisis came about as a result of the influx or the prominence of adjustable rate mortgages, right? And mortgage rates were at historically traditional lows, right? As rates go up, it's going to be tougher to borrow. So people are going to be not buying more house than they could afford. They'll be buying, more appropriately sized homes. So you might actually have less foreclosures going forward.
Understandable, but right now we still have people who, in their homes where they haven't been foreclosed upon yet, but in New Jersey, which is one of the few judicial states throughout the country of non-judicial and judicial states for foreclosure. We're one of the few judicial states, which is one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons that it takes, on average, between 3 to 5 years of non-payment for the actual sheriff's sale.
Right.
How is that going to be changed under the administration is really one of the things, because of course it's a trickle down because it's not universal throughout the whole country.
Right.
New Jersey is unique in how long the process takes. So if the housing crisis causes the interest rates to go up, and let's say that slows purchasing a little bit, Well, the foreclosures increased when people, the bank saw that they could sell the houses they foreclose upon. So it's slower to
Right.
sell the house. That might help. But what do you think?
The Trump administration is not going to have an impact on that. What you've seen in New Jersey are, is sort of a tightening up and a shortening of New Jersey's, as you mentioned, judicial foreclosure timeframes. So you've seen improvements in New Jersey. Now, whether or not you're seeing that trickling down, I can't speak to. You could speak better than that. But certainly you've seen banks and public interest consumer groups work together to sort of shorten the amount of time it takes for foreclosures to happen in New Jersey. Federal law is not going to change that. That's going to be a state issue.
Well, I didn't know if you might see that Donald Trump would do anything to help the homeowners. Because, of course, a faster foreclosure for New Jersey homeowners in distress is actually worse for them.
I suspect if he were here today, I suspect what he would say is that what he's going to do to help people in financial stress is create more jobs.
Well, let's
Better
hope that
paying
that's
jobs.
Better paying
Jobs.
jobs. So
Yeah.
then my next question would definitely lead to, how do you see that in changing the minimum wage federally and in New Jersey?
Well, New Jersey's going to, at least the Democratic legislature and Democratic leadership in the state, is going to advance the $15 minimum wage issue in 2017. I don't know.
We're not jumping to $15 an hour, though.
No, the
so
proposal.
what would be the next step in 2017 or 2018?
So currently, right now, you have a minimum wage tied to consumer, an index,
Right.
and so each year, but the increases are small. For example, it's a 6-cent increase.
How does that help anyone?
Well, it doesn't. So this $15 minimum wage initiative is to get to $15 over the course of the next several years. So you have more significant increases. Again, that's a New Jersey initiative. I don't think you're going to see that necessarily federally, but certainly here in New Jersey, the Democratic legislature and leadership will be advancing that in 2017. Expect it, perhaps, to be on the ballot next November.
So my next question then leads to education. Yes, we have one of the highest property taxes in the country without any argument from anyone. We also, though, have, and people forget this, I think some of the best school systems than anywhere else in the country. We do have pockets where people aren't happy with it, but overall as a state. So what can you
There's a
shed
great
light on that?
disparity.
Right.
We also have more school districts than most states. Most states don't organize the way we organize.
A lot of repetition.
Well, also there's almost 600 school districts, each
Wow.
with their own governance, each with their own.
Board of Education.
That's part of the governance. Each one with their own budget. Each one with certain types of kids that cost more money, whether they have special education needs or are considered below the poverty level. So there's a lot of factors that go into the disparity between rich and poor, urban and rural, et cetera, because we have a state that's very diverse. What'll be interesting, Trump's appointment as the head of the Secretary of Education nationally is a school choice advocate. She is someone who promotes competition as part of the public education system. In a state like New Jersey that is very much entrenched into a traditional delivery of public education, you're going to see tension because what is going to come down in the way of policy and grants in money to support the states are things that are going to support things like charter schools.
Wait, tell us about charter. Hold on for the second. I think a lot of people would like an explanation as to what a charter school is. I think a lot of people still don't understand that.
A charter school is a public school. It is a public school that is with public school kids in it. It is an alternative to what would be a traditional public school. The law was put into effect to provide other options for that kid who might be a square peg that doesn't fit into a round hole or cookie cutter model that would come with traditional public school education. Not every public school suits a kid. Now, someone like me who comes from a background where I believe a child should drive all education as opposed to an institution telling every child to fit into this cookie cutter model, to me, it gives that extra option for the parent who can't afford the private prep school or the Catholic school or the yeshiva. It gives them an extra place to say to their kid who might be more directed to do something like dance or music or, acrobatics, something that is atypical and that every public school can't offer, it might give them another option of placement.
So my question is, wouldn't the technology schools that they have in the counties, the VOTEX, which they now have made a lot more challenging to get into for the students, they call now the academies. You have the Morris County Academies,
Sure.
you have the Bergen County Academies. Actually, there's several different buildings and schools, I understand, in Essex County. So some of these, and if you look at the listing of all the school systems in New Jersey, they're in the top 5% or better, the top 10%, the top 10 or 15 schools out of that many school systems.
And that's great. I think the more options kids have to direct them toward a career as opposed to just give them a general education, because that's the end goal. As a parent, the end goal is my son gets a job. If I'm going to invest in 4 years of college, and in his case, private school, I want him to have a job at the end of that experience. My child did have a job, but does every child? And the truth
Right.
is that's one of the big problems right now. How many kids graduate with a ton of debt, a ton of just obligations, and then they end up moving home and they never leave until all those bills are paid, and that's
Which
not
might
what-
be never.
Never.
Wait, maybe their third wedding later.
Exactly. So, the more we can direct a child toward something that will give them the ability to make a living, to have an enriched life, to have the American dream, I think we should start that earlier. I think we should start that, give them as many options as possible to get there. And we have to get away from this traditional one way, one provision, all kids are the same, because they're not.
So here, let me ask you, how does that come into play with President Trump's new appointment? So how does she have an effect
She's going
on this?
to probably incentivize states to consider vouchers.
What does that mean, vouchers? Please.
Essentially, it's giving the parent the ability to take what would be their share of dollars that is tagged to their kid and shop it around and find a school that the child fits best in, and a school that wants the child. So that could be parochial, that could be private, that could be homeschooling.
So
that
you're
could
saying
be,
that these vouchers could help pay for a private education?
Absolutely.
Even if it's a religious-based private education,
Yes,
regardless of which religion?
Right, exactly. That it would become a parent-child choice as opposed to one that's dictated. We'll only pay if it's in this place.
But keep in mind, though, Vivian, the flip side to that is that New Jersey, as you mentioned at the outset, is a highly taxed state.
Yes.
We're highly taxed because of our property taxes, which pay for our public education system. So when you start taking money out of the existing public education system to spend it through vouchers or through charter schools or other places, you're taking money out of the public's investment in their public schools, and that's where the concern
That's where the conflict
on the part
occurs.
of what certainly public education advocates, but also taxpayers.
Right, of course.
Right.
And so, but a lot of this is tied to, if they do these reforms, how does the effect come into play
Well,
for jobs?
they don't have to. Well, first of all, the state doesn't have to take any of the grants, any of the incentives that the federal government offers to do these innovative, alternative types of ways of providing traditional education. New Jersey is very much a traditional education, very rooted in. Certainly, the teachers' union is the most powerful in the country. They tend to be resistant to major change. They feel what's there should be improved rather than changed. And so, if we have a new governor come in, this governor is a school choice governor, so he would be receptive to what Trump's doing. If a Democrat comes in 2017, they can make the choice that not to buy into what the government, what the federal government is saying.
Now, Barbara, I would like to bring this out, that this is a bipartisan mini panel here. And by the way, what I love is it's going contradictory to what people are used to. Can you do me a favor and identify yourselves? Who's the Republican, who's the Democrat?
So I'm a registered Democrat. I'm a local Democratic official in my hometown, and I play that role as we do personally and professionally, but that's who I am.
And I am from southern New Jersey, and I came up through Republican circles, although I would say probably at this age, after so many years, I vote for candidates, I don't vote for parties, but I tend to lean fiscally conservative and socially more moderate, like most of the Republicans in New Jersey.
Well, I love that we have both of you working so well together to get things accomplished, but bringing knowledge in is really key. And if you don't mind, I'd like to just segue back to one topic in regards to housing, since we are talking about major housing crisis still in New Jersey. We had the New Jersey Home Keepers Program, if the memory serves me correctly. Are you aware of any of those details, if they're going to be replenishing those funds, or where someone can go to find out, or when we'd find out? I believe the maximum is either $40,000 or $50,000 available to distressed homeowners.
So this is a program through the Department of Banking and Insurance, and I would
Yes,
think
in
that
New Jersey.
yeah. So I would suggest that anybody who needs to apply for that type of assistance would do so through the Department of Banking and Insurance. Maybe a good way, either through their website, or if you're really having a hard time finding that information, maybe calling your local legislator, your local representatives, either a senator or a state assembly member, who can put you in touch with the right folks at the department.
I do believe it's easy to research, but do you believe, and you know this is neither of yours area of expertise, but do you think something like that would be refunded? Because I think it's funded per year. So going into 2017, how do you think that will be replenished or not?
It might very well be. I think the need is decreasing. Even though I know you keep saying that you see more and more.
Well, plus in
folks
Atlantic
coming
County,
in,
you said,
and in
right?
But overall, I think that that foreclosures are working their way through the system. So from a funding perspective, I think that it should be addressed. I don't know what the plans are. We have one more budget cycle with this governor, so I would expect pretty much what we've seen out of him in the past couple of years. I would expect one more year of that, and then you'll get perhaps a Democratic governor in 2017 with different priorities. So it's hard to kind of see beyond this most immediate budget year.
And you have to treat Atlantic County differently because there is now a takeover
Right.
of Atlantic City by the state, which will change the whole dynamic of how things are done, what incentives will be done for the people there. And you have to keep in mind it's a region. It's not just the city itself.
Right, of
so
course.
one will impact the other. So I think that generally what will happen is there will be a whole-scale approach to that area, somewhat apart from how they would approach it generally.
Which
as
may
a
shift
state.
funding, right?
course,
Because
I
if there's an
understand.
acute distress in one
Absolutely.
particular region of the state,
That does change
funds
things.
would be directed there to address that problem.
So we are running out of time, so let me ask you this. If you could each provide us with what you believe would be a quick little piece of nugget of information to leave our audience with.
Well, I think going into our inauguration, which by the time this show airs will be maybe just a week or very pending,
Soon.
right? I think that post this election, Americans kind of have to come together and give this president. This is me, the Democrat on the panel, but I think that for the better of our nation, whether we are pleased with the election results or not, it's incumbent on us to continue to be involved productively in the political process and to move forward from this point forward. Certainly speaking out against policies that we don't think are the right direction, but by the same token, working towards that next election and trying to bring back, the type of policies that we might feel this candidate isn't representing.
So how about we leave the animosities and the bitterness behind if we voted for the party who did not win and just come together
Absolutely.
under the current
And it would
new
be,
administration.
and it would be the first time I voted for a candidate who didn't win, and we're still here.
We are. We will
And doing
continue
well.
to be here. And how about yourself, Barbara?
Well, I love what Sal said, and this is one of the reasons we work so well together, coming from different parts of the state, different genders, different parties, etc. We do find that in Trenton, the only way you get something done is by working together. And I encourage everyone who wasn't active or had a lot to say but didn't vote, please, in the future, vote. Exercise that right. This is going to be interesting. I would say to everyone that so much of what President-elect Trump will do will probably be reflected in his choices for various cabinets. So pay attention to that, and we'll see which direction it goes.
Well, I'm sure it'll be a very interesting ride, especially in the next
Yeah.
few months.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, both,
Thank
for
you,
being on the
Vivian.
show.
Absolutely.